I'd like to introduce our first keynote speaker of the conference. His name is Mike Morhaime. He's the president of Blizzard Entertainment. Everyone understands the power of WoW. They have the largest online game, subscription-based game in North America and Europe, as well as the world, 9 million subscribers. It's a definite worldwide brand, which there are not many worldwide brands you think about as far as games go, and definitely Blizzard has developed definitely a worldwide brand with their products. And I'd like to introduce Mike Morhaime. He will give a speech on the 10 lessons of learned from globalizing an IP brand, and I'd like to introduce him now. Mike.
Hi, everyone. The stuff we're able to do today simply was not possible just a few years ago. We're able to connect people to each other in new ways, and online gaming is right at the center of this. Our industry is young and moving fast. I wanted to start off by just kind of taking a look back at the 20th century. A century I think we were all very lucky to have been born into. When you think about generations and generations of human history, our century is the first ever to even have a electronic games industry. My generation is the first to grow up playing games, and I think you're all, most of you, in the same boat. And that puts us in a pretty unique situation. So looking back at the 20th century, this was the first, actually, this century, there was a revolution in transportation, communication, information. The world has become a much smaller place. We're able to communicate with people anywhere in the world, anytime we want. Our ability to store and retrieve information is totally unprecedented. And the rate of technological progress has continued to increase exponentially. This kind of increase in technological progress and change is totally unprecedented in the history of the world. And sometimes when you're sitting at the center of things that are moving so fast, you don't even recognize how quickly they're moving. Case in point, we're all sitting on this rock that's hurling through space at 67,000 miles per hour, and we don't really notice that too much until we complete a whole trip around the sun, and we step back and look at how much has changed and how far we've come. So I thought we'd start by maybe looking back at and recognizing just how much has changed in the past 100 years. 100 years ago, there were only 8,000 cars in the United States. There was no Air Force yet. Orville and Wilbur Wright wouldn't even present their airplane for demonstration to the U.S. military until 1908. Only 8% of the United States homes even had a telephone. So to put this in terms that some of us can understand, it was kind of like World of Warcraft. Before, you had a mount with no flight paths. So if you think about that, that's like how the real world was 100 years ago. So in addition to all of these advances in transportation, maybe some of the bigger changes are with respect to computer power, and that certainly impacts our industry and what we're able to do. A big catalyst for this rapid development is described by Moore's Law, which predicts that every 1.5 to 2 years, the density of transistors we're able to put on an IC doubles. This has increased the amount of data we can store and the rate that we can transmit and process this data as well. Like I mentioned, there's never been this kind of exponential increase in technology before in history, and there's also haven't been any other examples of any other industries that have experienced this kind of rapid change. To kind of put that in perspective, back in 1991, it took 9 hours to fly from LA to Paris. 91 is the year that we started Blizzard. If the airline industry had been making improvements that corresponded to Moore's Law, it would now take about 2 minutes. So our industry is still brand new as an industry. And while we're not making the hardware, it certainly impacts what we're able to do. Our games are constrained by the equipment players have, and as people get higher and higher end systems that are connected via higher end connections, broadband, new possibilities open up for us as game developers that were just not possible before, and this is a trend that does not seem to be slowing down. So I just wanted to kind of talk about that as the context that we're all living in today. Rich mentioned this is only the 4th year of the Austin Game Developer Conference, which focuses on online gaming. So we're really just kind of in an industry that's in its infancy. And I was fortunate enough to graduate from college in 1990, which is a great time to get started in game development. So what I'd like to talk about today, I'd like to give you a brief history of Blizzard Entertainment and how we got started in the games industry. I'd like to share some of Blizzard's core philosophies that I think have served us very well over the years. I'll talk about World of Warcraft and some of the surprises, challenges, and lessons that we've learned along the way. So in 1991, I started Blizzard with 2 other friends. We were recently graduated from UCLA's engineering school. My friend Alan Adham, it was really his idea to start the company, and he recruited myself and Frank Pierce to join him. Alan and I each contributed $10,000. Alan received 10 grand from his parents as a kind of a graduation present, and I borrowed the money from my grandma. We also brought in our 2 PCs from home into the office. Those were kind of our development PCs in the beginning. I had a 386, 20 megahertz with an 80 meg hard drive, which was pretty big at the time. Alan had a 386 SX, 16 megahertz. Which was kind of your value buy. It was a much simpler time. The amount of data you were able to store in your games and to sell was limited by the capacity of your floppy disks. It was before CD drives. So literally a couple programmers, a couple artists, maybe a sound guy, kind of optional, could make a game. That's really all it took. We started out by doing conversions, taking games that larger publishers would release, say, on the PC, and they'd hire us to convert them to the Macintosh or the Amiga. And that's really how we learned a lot about game development from looking at how some of these more established companies approached game development, because we were just getting the game to run on these new platforms. 1991 happened to be the year that the Super Nintendo was released in North America, and we were hired by Interplay to create a racing game for the Super Nintendo, which we actually released in that first year. We did it in about 4 months, got our early completion bonus, which was probably like $5,000 or something. So, and then we started building up teams capable of creating our own original products, and we would pitch these ideas to publishers like Interplay or Sunsoft, and we created some Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis games. We were selected as Best Software Developer of 1993 by Video Games Magazine, and around that time is when the 16-bit console market started to decline, and we decided to shift our focus to creating PC games, and so our first PC game was Warcraft, Orcs and Humans. And this also kind of coincided with when the internet was starting to become widely used, with websites starting to develop, and so we started looking at how our games could take advantage of that new internet access to connect people to play competitively over the internet. Since we became part of Davidson, that kind of started a series of mergers and acquisitions at our parent company level that eventually wound us where we are now as a division of Vivendi Games, owned by the French company Vivendi. But thanks to the initial relationship we had with Bob and Jan Davidson and the track record we built up along the way, we were able to really protect our creative autonomy and even extend that out to all of the other aspects that define the Blizzard brand. So Blizzard is now a full-fledged publisher with control over all of our intellectual property, and really anything that says the Blizzard name on it goes through our approval process everywhere in the world. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that. Our first priority was always to make great games, and so gameplay first is kind of one of our mantras. This isn't going to be a design talk. Rob Pardo actually was here last year and delivered the game design talk at the Austin GDC. But I should say right off the bat that if we don't get this part right, none of the rest of it matters. So I borrowed a slide from Rob's presentation last year. So we kind of view the game market like a donut. The center of the donut represents the core markets. Those are your hardcore players that are buying and playing a lot of games. They're the opinion makers, or the ones that we all go to, and certainly the casual players go to and, you know, hey, is this game good? Should I check this out? And the casual markets are the big mass market, much bigger than the core markets. And we think in order to be real successful, ideally, we want to hit both of those markets. And so the way that we do that is we try to build games that are deep and replayable while still being accessible to the broader market. We try to reduce any barriers to entry that might exist. One of those obviously is system requirements. The mass market doesn't have the high-end system that the early adopters have. And so we want to make sure that if you purchase a system in the relatively recent past, last couple of years, Blizzard games should run on it. So another one of our mantras is easy to learn, difficult to master. There are some great examples of this out in the games industry today, you know, beyond just Blizzard games. Guitar Hero, I think, is probably one of the best examples. You can spend an awful long time trying to master that game and getting your scores up on expert level and beating the whole game, but it's also easy for anybody just to pick up that guitar and go through the tutorial and feel like they know how to play. So this is something that we always look at in all of our games. We always look to see what the new user experience is. Do people, we build kind of a shallow ramp, even though, you know, after you've played World of Warcraft for many months, you have quite an awful lot of controls and decisions and possibilities that you can do with your character. But in the beginning, it's really very simple to get into. So at Blizzard, we view our brand as our most important property. We do whatever we can to build brand equity in the Blizzard brand and protect our brand. and we want it to mean something. We want it to stand for high-quality games, fun, polish. One of our goals is for gamers to have so much faith in our brand that if they were to walk into a game store and see a game on the shelves, and the only thing they know about the game is that it's from Blizzard, that would be enough to have them buy the game because they trust the brand so much. That's kind of the ultimate for us. From a marketing perspective, you can view the brand as kind of like a bank account, and you want to make only brand deposits and avoid making brand withdrawals. A brand withdrawal would be an experience that a gamer would have where they would walk away thinking that they didn't get the right amount of value that they expected from the experience. So that's something we really want to avoid. And that goes to the marketing plans that we do, the kinds of promotions we do, the amount we charge for things. We always want people to leave the experience thinking they got at least as much value as they contributed. So now I'm going to run through some of these other kind of philosophies that have applied to really all of our games beyond World of Warcraft, but I think also apply to World of Warcraft in our future titles. And this is, of course, a big one. There's always pressure to release a game before it's ready. There's pressure on all of you that are in game development. There's certainly pressure on us. There's pressure from the development team who is tired of working on the game and wants to release it. There's people out there who are anticipating the game and they want to play it. There's pressure from the finance guys who put some number in a budget somewhere, and if you're a public company, there's analysts who are expecting certain things to happen, and if those things don't happen, then there's potential consequences out in the market. But we think that shipping a game early is a very risky thing. Coming back to the previous slide, building the brand, shipping a game early can do tremendous damage to a brand or a franchise. You only have one chance to make a first impression. And once you lose that chance, you may have lost the player. They may not come back. We try to think long term, and certainly shipping early and losing a bunch of players just so that you can meet those numbers is a very short-term mentality. We also, even for public companies, I think there's this mindset shift that happens where the current financial quarter is like the most important ever, and we have to hit this date, and the numbers are going to close in 2 days, and if we don't get this out, we're going to miss the numbers and all that. But once the numbers close, well, that's no longer the most important quarter, and now the current one is, and you just totally screwed it up by releasing the game last quarter, and it's not going to sell as well as it could have. And so probably the best thing that happened to us happened back in 1996 when we were working on Diablo. And Diablo was in danger of missing Christmas. That's just awful. You got to have your game out for Christmas, right? That's when everybody's in the stores buying your game. And we worked like crazy to get Diablo finished in time for Christmas. And just wasn't ready. Not much we could do about it. And so we missed Christmas, and we ended up releasing the game on December 31st. So we made the quarter and the year, but we missed Christmas. And of course, the number of units we were able to ship in one day on December 31st wasn't really what we were hoping for. But what ended up happening is people got the game, they really liked it, and it ended up selling great for the next year, 1997. And the reason this is good is it kind of proved the point. Nobody looks back at Diablo and says, oh man, if only Blizzard had released that game 3 weeks earlier, imagine how great that would have been. In fact, it probably would have been a disaster because people wouldn't have brought it home and thought, how great is this game? They would have brought it home and thought, how buggy is this game? And so we're able to point to that. It was able to educate our parent company to this whole philosophy of quality matters. And I think, if you ask people what they remember about Diablo, I think most people don't really think about, oh yeah, that was the game that missed Christmas but still did well. They just remember that they really enjoyed playing it. And so this is kind of philosophy. Unfortunately, we have to test more often than we'd like. And most recently, we ran into a situation with Burning Crusade last year. And this was kind of a situation we could have made the year if we had decided to do it. But it would have been risky. I don't think we would have had enough time in test for the game. And after the kind of rocky launch that we had, we really wanted to get the expansion right. We felt that this was kind of our opportunity to show that we could smoothly launch a large content expansion like the Burning Crusade. And so we held it until January. And we were rewarded once again with the fastest selling PC game of all time, 2.4 million copies in one day. So I'm convinced that it's really in the interest of everybody, even the finance guys, to make sure that a game is ready before it goes out. So another point is we try to focus on what's important. There's a lot of pressure to do everything, to compete everywhere, to not miss an opportunity that exists. You know, the marketing guys are always coming up with new opportunities. Public relations always has new public relations opportunities, and all this stuff can be very distracting. So we try to identify what's really important and focus on those things. And then build on your success, right? Once you get that core foundation, then you can start building and doing more ambitious and more complicated things. But if you try to do everything at once, your risk goes way up that you might not get anything right. Of course, World of Warcraft is a monster project. I don't think we would have been able to execute on World of Warcraft if we hadn't had the experience and lessons that we had learned over the years from all of the other games that came before it. So I'd like to talk a little bit about how Blizzard has evolved as a global company. And right now we do view ourselves as a global company with global players, and we try to remind ourselves of that all the time when it comes to making certain decisions. Do we do something in the United States first and then do it everywhere else? Or do we try to do it all at the same time? How do we release information to the world? All of these things. But back when we started, the United States was really the only important market for games. And so our focus was entirely on the United States. We develop our games in English, and then after the game was finished and released in the United States, only then would we go and start looking at the other markets, translate them into other languages, and release them. And we weren't really too concerned about that, the amount of time that might elapse. And then we started looking at Europe, which was starting to become a more important gaming market. And we started to realize that the gray market was really hurting us in Europe. What was happening was we'd release the game in English in the United States, and all the hardcore players in Europe would immediately go out and get gray market imported versions of our games. And so when it came time to launch our game in the localized language, whatever that was, all the hardcore players were already playing the game. It was no longer really new, and the retailers weren't getting behind our games to help us with the launch. So we realized we needed to shorten the delay between launching in America and launching outside in the rest of the world. We needed to get that as small as possible. In Asia, the markets developed quite differently. Game rooms were very important. There are about 20,000 game rooms in Korea and about 200,000 game rooms in China. To put those numbers in perspective, there are about 30,000 McDonald's in the whole world. Okay, so game rooms are very important, and making sure that your game operates well in game rooms is very important. So as we were looking at how to better take account for these different types of markets, we decided that we wanted to simultaneously launch our games everywhere around the world, and basically get all the retailers behind the games and treat all the markets around the world and all the players kind of on an equal footing. So this is kind of what our launch growth history looks like. You can see with Warcraft 1 exclusively, really, most of the sales were in North America, and then we gradually started to become more global, and then a big shift kind of happened around the StarCraft Diablo 2 time. That red bar on StarCraft, that's mostly Korea. StarCraft was not designed with Asian languages in mind, and in fact, to this day, the only Asian language it's been translated into is Japanese, and the Japanese version isn't compatible with the other versions, so they won't play against each other. To this day, there still isn't a Korean version of StarCraft. They're all playing in English. But they are playing, and it continues to be an extremely popular game in Korea. And so that really kind of opened our eyes to this big gaming market in Asia, and especially Korea. So when it came time for Diablo 2, we decided we were going to simultaneously launch our game around the world. And you can see what a huge difference that made. In Warcraft 3, we did roughly a third across the different regions, North America, Europe, and Asia. World of Warcraft, we actually didn't do a simultaneous worldwide release. This kind of goes back to try to focus on what's really important, and don't bite off more than you can chew. We knew that we were going to be launching a very complicated new system, and we didn't want to have to deal with fighting fires all around the world, so we executed a staged launch between our major markets. So one last point about the global markets, and this may be a controversial point, I don't know, but you hear a lot of talk about the way to succeed internationally is to localize your game and customize it for the local taste, right? And so have people in the region basically who can tell you what the local taste is, and then customize your game for that taste, and then that's, you know, kind of the key. And we don't really think about it like that. We think that there are different styles of play that exist everywhere, just in different concentrations. So you may have more people in Korea that like playing PvP than PvE, but you still have both, and you still have both here. And there are different styles of play that like certain types of interfaces. There are different types of play that some people like to solo, some people like to raid. There are these different styles, but they exist everywhere. So instead of creating 15 different versions of the game that are customized to appeal to everyone's local tastes, what we do is we look at what the different styles are, and we try to make sure that our game provides something for the different styles, and so that we try to make everyone kind of feel welcome in the game. And then there are other decisions that you have to make where it's really you have a choice. You can either go one way or the other, and sometimes we think that these are objective calls. Going one way maybe makes the game better, regardless of what people are telling us that they think that they want. We're able to look and kind of see that sometimes there are design reasons why one design is actually superior to the other designs, and so we don't second guess ourselves by designing for other people. We're our own target market. That's the way we look at it. We play our games. Everyone at Blizzard plays our games, and so we feel that if we like our games, then other people outside the walls will like them too. It's not really, we don't view it as a guessing game. You do have to be sensitive to different cultures, though. And I'm going to give you an example of an area that we kind of screwed this up. In the Warcraft 3 days, we thought it would be really cool to add a panda race to the game. Our art director, Sam Didier, loves pandas and loves drawing them, and so we added this, the Pandarans to the Warcraft universe. The thing was, Sam had them dressed up in samurai outfits with Japanese armor and weapons, and it turns out that our Chinese players really did not appreciate seeing their pandas dressed up in Japanese clothing. And they told us about it loudly. We got so much mail and forum posts, and they were angry at us for being so insensitive to the culture. And it was really a big wake-up call for us. First of all, we didn't even realize we had that many Chinese players at the time. But second of all, you know, there are expectations they have. They're very proud of the panda. And we changed the art very quickly. We dressed them in Chinese clothing with Chinese weapons and armor, and we got an enormous amount of appreciative response from our Chinese players. They really appreciated that we were listening and that we responded to their concerns. Okay, so now I'd like to shift and start focusing on World of Warcraft. So when it came time to launch World of Warcraft, we already were training ourselves to have a global mindset. And so in China, we chose the 9 Interactive, and in Taiwan, a company called Softworld. And our partners handle all of the customer support and server infrastructure, as well as localization and marketing. This is kind of a graphical view of what our global operations look like. So our European office is based in Vélizy, France. We have an office in Seoul, Korea. And of course, our North American office is headquartered out of Irvine, California. So we ran into a number of challenges with World of Warcraft, and so I'm going to talk about some of those now. The first big challenge was estimating how many people would actually want to play a game like this. This was our first subscription-based game. It was our first online-only game. And, you know, of course, because it's online-only, you kind of need to know how many people are going to want to play it, because it impacts the number of servers that you buy, where you set those servers up, how many customer support people you need, how much bandwidth you need for the servers. There's a lot of infrastructure with long lead times that you need to know. So back in 1943, CEO of IBM made a kind of forecast, and he predicted there would be a worldwide market for maybe 5 computers. And it turns out he was pretty wrong. And so were we. So these are some photos from our midnight opening sale at the local Fry's Electronics. So when we launch a game, we have a midnight opening at the local Fry's, and the development team drives down there, and we sign some boxes. And I got down there a couple hours before midnight, and the parking lot was full. You had to park like 3 blocks away, and I get there, and there's line, and it wraps around the building 3 times before heading down the street. And if you've been to Fry's, you know that their parking lot is huge, and it's all packed. And so this kind of made us go, wow. Don't know what's going to happen in the next week or so, but if this is any indication, we need some more hardware. So one of the, we didn't have very many data points to look at. We knew how many subscribers EverQuest had. Of course, we had the PC data numbers from EverQuest sales, and EverQuest was the best-selling morgue to that point. We also knew what the sales curve looked like for Warcraft 3. And at the time, Warcraft 3 was the fastest-selling PC game of all time. And we thought, okay, well, we know that we're not going to sell faster than Warcraft 3. Because we're going to charge a monthly fee. That's probably going to alienate some people. It's online only. Some people aren't interested in that. At least people are going to be more hesitant and kind of wait and see how it goes before going out and buying a copy. They're going to want to kind of see what their friends think. So maybe, you know, might be really successful a year down the road, but definitely not out the gate. We're safe if we just think of Warcraft 3 as a ceiling, and we weren't. So it turns out we were wrong from the start and continued to be wrong. And at several points along the way, we had to actually stop shipping boxes to retail because we didn't have the capacity to support them. And this is kind of what our player growth looked like for the first year and some change. And so it really ramped up quickly, and we were immediately kind of in this fire of trying to play catch up. So when you're a small company, you don't really think too much about human resources. When you're a large company, you realize it's actually really important. You have all of these employees that have certain needs, and you need a staff of people dealing with those things. We found we needed to scale up the entire business overnight. And by scale up the entire business, I mean everything. Development staff, IT staff, a live team that's dealing with problems that are occurring technologically with the game, while the rest of the development team continues adding features. We needed to split the two because the fires are really distracting, and were making it very difficult for us to add new things, because it was the same people we were relying on to fix problems and add new features. So we had to basically split off a live dev team that just focused on fixing things, so we could not slow down improving and adding new things to the game. Community management, customer service, of course, was a big one that we needed to ramp up. And we needed a management team in all of these different groups to be able to bring on all of these new people. And human resources and recruiting, staffing up a recruiting department. But when we launched World of Warcraft, I don't even think we had a recruiting department. The managers basically did their own recruiting, and we didn't have time to do that anymore. So we weren't prepared at all. So leading up to World of Warcraft, we felt that we had learned a lot from running Battle.net over the years. We had hundreds of thousands of concurrent players. We had our own set of challenges scaling up Battle.net. We learned a lot from that, and we did learn a lot from that. But when you go to running a subscription-based service with paying subscribers and a 24/7 operation, providing customer service, it's really a whole new ballgame. And we thought we understood this. I mean, all of these words that I'm saying to you, I probably would have said to you before we launched too, but the meaning behind them and what that actually means to a company, none of us really understood. And I guess the bottom line is that running a morgue it's not just game development, it's all of these other things that go into impacting the player's experience that are maybe just as important as the game itself. And we had to kind of shift our mindset that we weren't just a game development company or a game publisher anymore. We were now a service company. And we needed to kind of apply some of the things that service companies do. So we did have a community management team, but like I said, it probably didn't have the proper amount of staff in it. But even more important than that was we found when there were problems with the game, we didn't have a sufficient process to deal with those problems and at the same time communicate to our players what was going on. And so we would run into these fires where, okay, there's a bug. There are going to be bugs, right? And so but we don't know necessarily what the problem is. And so our game programmers are working on trying to identify what the problem is. The community management guys are, getting a lot of questions on the forums, but they don't really know what to say because they don't know what the problem is. They don't know how long it's going to take to fix. We don't even know what to tell them because we don't know what the problem is. So we're just kind of in this holding pattern, not saying anything, while the community is kind of wigging out, which is what communities do when you don't talk with them. And so we had to develop a process that not only kept our local community team informed, but also kept all of the people around the world informed who had a need to know what was happening. So we had to develop formalized email lists to communicate information through that went to a global management team. We also had to develop a layer of people kind of around the development team whose job it was to keep our internal people informed. And then we also had to develop a process for dealing with the situations where we didn't know. We don't have an ETA, but we know there's a problem, but we don't have an ETA. We don't know when it's going to be fixed, but check back in an hour and we'll have more information for you, so that people didn't have to poll on the forums to see when they could get back online, which causes your forums to sometimes go down if everybody's going there at the same time. So there were a lot of things like that. Let's see. What time is this over? 10:30? Okay, so actually, we're getting really close to the end. I'm going to go faster. Avoid financial incentives. So what happens if there is a financial reward for doing something is that you'll find a lot of people go out and do that thing. So let's say that you could sell gold in the real world and make money doing that. People will farm gold and sell it in the real world and make money doing that. This has really bad implications that are negative to the wider group of players that just want to play the game. So, you have, for instance, sweatshops set up in areas of the world where labor is cheap, that spend all of their time harvesting gold from the game so that they can sell it to the rich Americans, right? You have people who write Trojan programs to steal player accounts and passwords so they can steal your account, sell your gold to the rich Americans, right? And you have people that, that are running these sweatshops, and instead of buying their accounts legitimately, well, it's a lot cheaper if you just steal credit cards and buy lists of stolen credit cards and use those to pay for the account, so that when we go to charge the account, it's really some innocent guy who's never even heard of Blizzard or World of Warcraft and wondering why there's a $15 charge for the game on his account. So we do whatever we can to try to minimize the financial rewards from behaving in this way. And then kind of the last one I wanted to talk about is how important testing is to the process. And this is a step that I think, when you have that pressure to release a game early, generally what happens is your game doesn't get enough time in test. At Blizzard, everyone tests. And then once we complete our internal alpha, where everyone at Blizzard has played the game and we think it's pretty good, then we'll go into a public beta phase where we'll ask people from outside the company to come and play it. Since we're constantly releasing new content with World of Warcraft, we found it's very valuable to have a test site, a public test server, where our players can actually hop on and help us test out this new content before it goes live. We didn't launch World of Warcraft with a test site. It was probably a huge mistake in retrospect. I think it saved us a little money because sites are expensive, but in the long run, I think that the increased value we're able to provide for players by ensuring that our patches are more thoroughly tested, stable when they go out. It's certainly worth having a test site and using it. So in getting ready for Burning Crusade, we wanted to apply all of the things that we learned from the World of Warcraft launch. We went and upgraded our entire hardware infrastructure around the world to remove the bottlenecks that we were seeing that were causing lag or causing us to not get the performance that we thought we were going to get from the hardware. And so we added a lot of extra capacity for day one. We recognized that we weren't necessarily good at forecasting demand, and so we padded our forecast this time and made sure we had excess capacity. So even if we were wrong, it would still be okay. And this time, our launch went much more smoothly. Our servers actually withstood the initial demand very well, and our customer service guys actually told us that they felt that the Burning Crusade launch actually launched like a very smooth patch release, which is exactly what you want to hear. We did a staged release for the initial World of Warcraft launch, but with Burning Crusade, we actually did a simultaneous North America and European release. We launched the game there at the same time, and we actually, for the first time ever, had midnight openings at stores around the world. And it was really incredible for us to kind of watch, looking at Blizzard with, you know, the internet there and being able to kind of see the response from all over the world and pictures going up on the internet. It was almost like a New Year's celebration, because every hour, you know, a new market went online. I think it's a really exciting time to be in the games industry, and I think the future's looking very bright for us, both as gamers and game developers. And thanks for listening.